guys, we're the HABS. We chose the vertical of a new restaurant opening in Quebec for this project. Zach did the economic overview. Thomas researched the history and institutions. I'm Alec. I did the languages and religions. Haley did the daily life. And John did barriers and rich points. We got most of our research from the university's library databases, but also Haley is from Quebec, so that was also super helpful.
Alright, now I will talk to you about the economic overview. First up, we'll talk about basic economic indicators. Quebec is the largest Canadian city by area and is the most popular place to visit in Canada. Huge tourist attraction to see the beautiful old Quebec. They rank 28th in the world in real GDP per capita. The food industry is in the top 3 in Quebec. This proves to be a good sign to move a restaurant there. Next up, we'll talk about economic inequality. So the income inequality has been steadily increasing in Quebec over the past 20 years. The Gini index, which measures inequality on a scale from 0 to 1, Quebec ranks at a 0.35 and has been steadily increasing. Lastly, I'll speak on the recent trends. Their low income rates have been decreasing. They have the second lowest in all of Canadian cities. The underdevelopment of a few key industries set back the overall economic performance in 2015. They believe this will be short-lived. The real GDP forecast in June was 1.8% and is now at 1.3%, but is expected to jump to 1.9% by early 2016. Although the employment rate is expected to jump 2% over the next 2 years. I will now hand it over to Thomas to talk about the history and institutions.
Canada's parliamentary democracy, a system of government, holds that the law is supreme authority. One parliament for Canada, which is consisting of 3 distinct elements, which are the Crown, the Senate, and the House of Commons. Quebec City is the only walled city north of Mexico, which the wall goes around 4.6 kilometers. Canada and Quebec also offer the lowest tax burden and the lowest corporate tax rate. Quebec is the only province in Canada to have a judicial legal system under which civil matters are regulated by French heritage civil law, public law, criminal law, and other federal law under Canadian common law.
So in Quebec, the official language is French, but 47.3% of the people report that they can speak English. So what this means for a new restaurant opening there is that we're going to have menus that read in both French and English. Onto religions, over 90% of the population there is Christian, so over 6 million people. However, there are over 100,000 people that are Muslim and almost 90,000 people that are Jewish. So for a restaurant, this means that we're going to need to have both halal and kosher options as well.
Some daily life situations that might affect the restaurant in Quebec include living and working conditions. So this would include all street signs, instructions, menus, and any signage must be in French. Also, all businesses must be able to serve people in both French and English. Relevant minority persons that we would have to take into consideration would be that Anglophones, who are English speakers, are recognized as a minority in Quebec. And along with them and other non-French-speaking immigrants, they would have a harder time assimilating to Quebec due to legal legislation such as Bill 101, which will be discussed in the next slide. Another minority group we would have to take into consideration would be women. However, they play a really similar role to those in the U.S., being that both men and women have equal standing status in Canada, both politically and economically. Women do tend to be underrepresented politically, and on average are more likely to live below the poverty line. Another thing that is kind of a little different in Quebec is that household organization patterns. With people who are from Quebec, they tend to be similar to those in the U.S., being that they live on their own, families live together. However, with the large immigrant population, those families might live together and even have extended relatives that stay with them as well.
on to barriers and rich points. There are indeed a few cultural barriers to entry in Quebec. First off, the obvious language barrier between French and English speakers is something that a restaurant will have to deal with on a daily basis. All employees will need to know English and French in order for the restaurant to run successfully. Also, there is a bit of cultural tension in Quebec, which is known as a split identity. This exists because French-speaking Quebecois consider themselves a majority because they hold the majority in Quebec, but English-speaking Quebecois also consider themselves a majority because they hold the majority in Canada as a whole. As a country, Canada embraces and supports multiculturalism. In order to participate and relate to the culture of Quebec, we can participate in festivals such as the Jazz Festival, Bonhomme Carnival, Just for Laughs Festival, and the Grand Prix, and market and promote our restaurant in all of these places. On the legal side, NAFTA helps with the transition due to its reduction in trade barriers and established trade rules. A law that all businesses, especially restaurants, need to consider when in operation is Bill 101, which defines French as the official language of Quebec, but also requires all documents, such as signs, menus, and bills, to be either in French and English or just French alone. Also, all employees must at least speak French. An area of the legal side that is a barrier to us is that the structure of government in Canada is different than in the U.S. Canada is a parliament, while the U.S. is a democracy. This is an area where our team will need more information in order to comply with all Canadian laws that may be different. We will find this information through cooperation with the government in Canada, as well as its resources. This concludes our regional report on moving a business to Quebec. Thank you for your time.